Pablo Picasso's emotional life did not run alongside his art, it flowed directly through it, shaping every line, every fragment of shadow, every choice of color in a way that makes his early 20th century work feel less like a series of paintings and more like a psychological map of a young man grappling with grief, love, friendship, identity, and the abrupt shocks of existence. To understand the blue and rose periods is to enter Picasso's inner landscape at its most vulnerable, because these years, roughly 1901 to 1906, stand apart from his later, more intellectual explorations. They reveal not the deliberate mastermind of Cubism but the intensely human, wounded, searching soul beneath the layers of later artistic armor. At the dawn of the new century, Picasso was barely 20 years old, ambitious, prodigiously talented, and restless, splitting his time between Barcelona and Paris. He was full of confidence on the surface, yet his inner life was marked by volatility and an almost dangerous sensitivity to the world around him. Into this precarious emotional state entered one of the greatest tragedies of his youth, the suicide of his close friend Carlos Casagemas. Casagemas, a poet and painter, was part of Picasso's intimate circle, a young man plagued by emotional instability and unrequited love. His death in February 1901, violent, unexpected, and self-inflicted, struck Picasso with a force that reverberated through every aspect of his life. The shock was immediate but not superficial. Picasso plunged into a period of sorrow so profound that it altered his vision of humanity. In Paris, he wandered the streets at night, absorbing the poverty, loneliness, and despair that seemed to echo his own state of mind. The bohemian cafes and studios where he had once felt the thrill of artistic possibility now appeared hollow and cold. His grief coalesced into a new artistic language, elongated silhouettes, hunched bodies, gaunt faces with eyes that gazed downward as though unable to bear the world's brightness. These figures inhabit dim interiors, empty corners, and desolate urban spaces that seem to expand endlessly, swallowing the characters within them. Thus began the blue period. The blue was not decorative. It was structural, emotional, existential. The dominance of ultramarine, cobalt, Prussian blue, and the soft corrosion of ashen grays created an atmosphere of perpetual winter, a world drained of warmth, mirroring the numbness Picasso carried within. Blue, traditionally associated with spirituality and sorrow, became the color of his mourning, applied in wide cold washes or in sharp, cutting strokes that define rigid bodies locked in postures of exhaustion or despair. The subjects he chose intensified this mood. Blind men groping through empty spaces. Emaciated mothers clutching children with a hopeless tenderness. Beggars with hands clasped in quiet resignation. Lonely women in sparse rooms, their faces half-shadowed and remote. Old men wrapped in heavy coats, their weight seeming to rest not on chairs but on the very air around them. Even when painting familiar figures from Montmartre cafes, he transformed them into spectral presences, frail and remote, touched by the same grief that haunted him. Each image carries the emotional imprint of Casagemas's loss, but also Picasso's broader confrontation with the suffering he witnessed around him. Paris at the turn of the century was a complex landscape, glittering modernity on the surface, but underneath, immense poverty, addiction, hunger, and alienation. Picasso absorbed it all, and his empathy intensified his sadness. His art became a vessel not just for personal mourning but for the collective human condition, as though he were trying to speak for every overlooked, forgotten, or wounded soul. The intensity of the blue period was unsustainable. Grief demands expression, but it also demands release. By 1904, Picasso began to shift, very slowly, very tentatively, into a different emotional and artistic space. He settled more permanently in Paris, moving into the Bateau Lavoir, a rickety wooden building that housed an eclectic group of writers, musicians, and artists. The place was chaotic but alive, buzzing with conversation, creativity, and new friendships. Among the people he met there was Fernande Olivier. A warm, intelligent, and captivating woman who would become his first significant romantic partner. Their relationship, though complex and at times tumultuous, brought a degree of stability and intimacy that had been absent from Picasso's life since Casagemas' death. Gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, his palette began to warm. This transition marks the beginning of the Rose period, where blue had conveyed detachment, sorrow, and immobility. The soft pinks, warm oranges, and dusty reds of the Rose period introduced a world touched by warmth, movement, and tentative hope. The shift was not simply about love or emotional recovery, it reflected Picasso's deeper exploration of humanity's fragility and resilience. The Blue period had revealed the wounds. The Rose period revealed what grows around them, what survives, what endures. The figures of this new phase were circus performers, harlequins, saltimbanques, nomadic artists who lived on society's margins, always traveling, always performing, always balancing joy and hardship. Picasso felt a deep kinship with them. Like him, they moved between worlds. Like him, they masked vulnerability with creativity. Like him, they lived in the space between applause and loneliness. He portrayed them not as entertainers but as introspective, contemplative beings. A harlequin sits with folded hands, his face soft and solemn. A young acrobat stands with quiet dignity. Her body slender and still, her gaze resolute yet uncertain. A family of traveling performers rests between shows, their closeness speaking both of love and hardship. The gentle pinks and earth tones enfolding these scenes evoke warmth, tenderness, and the delicate complexity of human bonds. Yet even in this brightness, there lingers a subtle melancholy, remnants of the Blue period, shadows at the edges of the composition, small gestures of introspection that remind the viewer that Picasso's emotional wounds never fully closed. The circus world, after all, is one of fragile illusions and constant impermanence, a metaphor for the emotional uncertainties Picasso carried within. The Rose period represents not a rejection of sorrow but a transformation of it. The grief of the Blue period does not disappear, it is absorbed, softened, and re-articulated through new forms and colors. What emerges is a vision of humanity that is still vulnerable but also hopeful, still introspective but more open to connection, still marked by loss but capable of joy, tenderness, and renewal. Taken together, the Blue and Rose periods form a psychological diptych that reveals Picasso's deepening understanding of himself and the world. These were not stylistic experiments, they were emotional necessities. Each brushstroke was a confrontation with pain, memory, desire, and the complexities of the human condition. The transitions between color palettes were not aesthetic choices but emotional thresholds, moments when Picasso crossed from one internal state to another. These early periods foreshadowed a lifelong pattern. Throughout his career, Picasso's art remained inseparable from his emotional circumstances. Every major transformation, Cubism, Classicism, Surrealism, was preceded by internal upheaval or personal evolution. He painted not what he saw but what he lived, what he felt, what he struggled to understand. His canvases became a diary, a confession, a battleground, and a refuge all at once. In the Blue and Rose periods, we see Picasso at his most human, wounded, searching, hopeful, grieving, loving, observing. The paintings radiate vulnerability and truth. They are documents of a young man learning to translate the chaos of emotional experience into visual form. Building the foundation for the revolutionary achievements that would follow, what remains timeless about these works is the emotional honesty beneath them. They speak to the weariness of despair and the fragile beauty of hope. They show us that art can emerge from sorrow but also guide us beyond it. And they remind us that Picasso's genius was never simply a matter of innovation or technique, it was rooted in the raw, unguarded, deeply felt experiences that shaped the earliest chapters of his extraordinary life.